What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to a very special episode of the Volleyball Source podcast. My name is not Everett DeLorme. This is usually Everett's show. Not this time. I'm Rob St. Clair from south of the border in Chicago, stepping in. And I have a very special guest to help me preview the 2022 to 23 Italian men's SuperLega season. It is none other than the talent scout expert himself, the master of the transfer spreadsheet, Mr. Tommaso Panini. Welcome to the show, my friend, also known as Tommy Blizzard on Reddit and the Discord. Tommy, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Rob. It's great to be here.
So, okay, we've already got some people going on in the YouTube chat, so this is great. We're live on the Volleyball Source YouTube channel. I think I'll put this up on one of the podcast platforms after the fact, but let us know in the chat. You can ask Tommy or I any questions about the Italian League or anything you want to know throughout this show. You might see that I put a poll up in there because we're going to break down all the teams in the SuperLega this year, and wherever you want us to start. We can start from the top in terms of like the best teams from last year's finish, or we can start from the bottom. So vote in the poll just to let us know how you want us to guide the show. But Tommy, before we talk about the SuperLega, you being an Italian guy and a massive Italian volleyball fan, it is only right that we give you a platform to talk about this. The Italian men won the world championship. And I mean, Everett and I talked about it on the 9x9. We were blown away. We were very surprised. We didn't expect this, but Italy played a phenomenal tournament, and they were clearly the better team in the finals. I want to give you an open forum to brag or talk about the Italian team or whatever you want, Tommy. Tell us from an Italian perspective about your men winning the world championship.
Well, I would start using a very typical Italian phrase, which is let's give Caesar what belongs to Caesar. I mean, I kind of mocked you and Everett when you predicted that Italy wouldn't even reach the semifinals. But to be honest, I kind of agreed with you before the tournament. I wasn't that sure that Italy would be able to even qualify for the semifinals. And I mean, this was kind of an unexpected trophy for most of Italian volleyball fans. But in the end, I think that we deserved this title, and I think our main strength was not to be better than the other teams, but to lower the level than the other teams. I think we made, especially France and Poland, which were two teams that I thought they were way superior to us on a technical and physical side. I think we really put all we got to lower their performances. I mean, I did some data research. Take the final with Poland. Both Sliuka and Semeniuk and also Kurek arrived at the final. Both all the three of them were killing with more than 50%. I think they were all around 53, 54%. And nobody on the final went over 41. I think Kurek even went as low as 32 or something with 7.6 errors, something like that. And Slivka has been changed. Kurek has been subbed. Fornal went in, didn't really do much. Kaczmarek started high, but then he went low. And I mean, that's exactly the team that the Georgi thought about. A team that accepts to play long rallies, that doesn't give up if they maybe have just to throw the ball on the other court, just take a breather and prepare for the next defense. Defense was, of course, one of the keys, and they were helped by a very strong blocking. They created the direct points, but they also created a lot easier, an easier job for the defense, and even the serving was, I think, key, because Italy realized that we were not that big of a side-out team. We didn't have an ace like Wilfredo Leon that could solve all the bad side-out situations. So we didn't have that great servers. We didn't get many direct points, many aces, but we really drilled the Polish reception. I think Zatorsky, which is of course one of the best liberos in the world, had like 5% perfect reception, something like that.
It was bad. I remember that.
Yeah, and that was key also because Janusz and also the other setter had to run a lot through the court. So we basically left Kochanowski out of the game, and leaving Poland without their middles, it really helped us. And finally, I think that I was a bit of I wouldn't say a critic, but I have criticized Gianelli in the past because both with Perugia and with the national team, he had some so-and-so games in the recent past. But in this World Championship, he was pretty much flawless. I never saw a setter being so important for a team, realizing that the middles weren't really going on offense, but still insisting on them, keeping the game as unpredictable as possible. And in the end, he really took matter in the zone ends, literally. He had like 10 attacks and 5 points from spiking and 2 from blocking. He scored more points than the middles. It was simply incredible. Not to mention his leadership and all those little things that you can see, and he really deserved to be the MVP.
I totally agree. I'm right there with you. It's been a long time since I've seen a setter be that important to a team. And I mean, we'll talk about Perugia later on and the disappointing season that they had last year. And I remember when Everett and I were talking about that, there was definitely some blame to be put on Gianelli for the offense that he was running. And I think some of that criticism was deserved. But I agree with you. This whole World Championship, he played flawlessly. Every match that he set, he was probably the best player on the court on either team and a well-deserved MVP. So before we jump into the SuperLega, Tommy, how would you say, if at all, this Italian World Championship win affects this club season? Is there any boost that you think the Italian league or any of the players that were on this team, or is there any like ripple effect that an Italian World Championship win will have on this season of the SuperLega, do you think?
Well, I certainly hope so, especially in terms of fandom and spectators and followers, because there was sort of a controversy going on in these days, because the volleyball matches actually had really good results in terms of TV audience. The final has been broadcasted by Rai, which is the Italian national television, on their main channel, Rai Uno, Rai One, and they had like a 23% share, which is something that not even the Velasco's team was able to get. They had millions of people that tuned in and watched the whole game, so it was really an incredible result. But on the other side, the main newspaper, the main sports newspaper of Italy, gave very little space to volleyball. Just to give you an example, in the Monday after the final, the first page, they had like half of the space that soccer had, and there was no big match played on that Sunday. There was just some controversy about a goal that was not allowed after a replay, something like that. And then on 50 something pages, volleyball got at page 46. They had 35 pages of football, then 5 pages of Formula One, 2 pages of gossip, and Francesco Totti's wedding that was falling out, and then they had just 2 pages to volleyball, and it was such a shame. But they got a lot of angry comments on social media. So I hope this will convince also the papers to give more space to volleyball.
I hope so too. It's crazy to think about that, because Everett and I complain all the time about the lack of coverage that volleyball gets in our countries, but now we're thinking about the country that just won the World Championship and has the best club league in the world, like fighting the same battles. So I guess that proves that we're really all in this together.
Yeah, and the same period you saw Marca, the main Spanish sport newspaper that had the first page their national basketball team won the European Championship, or the fact that Federer retired. I mean, they can actually give more space to other sports, but in Italy, it seems like soccer is the super hyper king emperor, or whatever you can call him.
Going back to the Caesar reference that you made earlier. Well, so let's talk about the Italian Super League, because I think it's fair to say that it is the best club league in the world, and I think so. That's been proven over the last several years. There's been a lot going on in club volleyball for the last few years. A lot of it influenced by the COVID pandemic, but I think, would you agree that we're finally this year back to a normal SuperLega season? I think that everything about this is shaping up to be normal this Italian club season for the first time in several years.
Yeah, on one hand, I would agree with you. Firstly, because as you pointed out in your recap, there will be 12 teams, so an even number, so no more bye weeks, and hopefully there won't be at least as many matches rescheduled due to COVID. So this will help, of course, normalize the things. On the other hand, though, I think there could be some problems because, as you can understand, there, especially in Europe, we're going to have some energy-related problems. And since volleyball is an indoor sport, energy is used a lot for heating, for lighting, and all the other stuff, and not just for the match day, but also when the players have to train. So it's going to be an economic bloodbath for most teams. And Lega Volley already issued a joint statement along with Lega Basket, saying that this spike in energy prices will jeopardize the survival of some teams, and they asked the government for some help, but the government is technically dead. We're going to have elections this Sunday, so it's not going to be an easy season on that point of view. But as on the other side, this should be much more normal than the past 3 seasons.
Well, we can hope for the best in terms of the energy crisis, because that is important to keep in perspective of how that might affect volleyball. But yeah, I remember last season the rescheduling nightmares with teams catching COVID, and I mean, having 13 teams was already strange enough, and then there was all the capacity restrictions with fans. I think I was reading, but please confirm, and I certainly hope, are we back to full capacity in all the arenas?
Yes.
Oh, great
yes,
news.
we are, and we were actually we reached the 100%. I think in game 3 or of last year's semifinals, but this year we don't even have mandatory masks, so it's another step back to normality.
Great, that's great to hear. So, like Tommy was saying, at least for now, yeah, you never know. So let's go through the format of the league really quick. 12 teams. It's a very simple double round robin format. So every team plays the 11 other teams twice each, home and away, and that's really it. So every team will play 22 matches, and at the end of all that, the top 8 teams will make the playoffs. Pretty simple, like single elimination series format once we get to the playoffs. One thing that people have made fun of me for how much I really enjoy relegation races. I really had a good time with that last year. We could talk about it in a little bit, but as a lot of European sports go, the last ranked team of the 12 gets relegated to the A2 division, and then the winner of this year's A2 division will get promoted to the SuperLega for next year. And then, Tommy, tell us about the other 2 kind of in-season tournaments, the Super Cup and the Coppa Italia, because that, I think, for North American fans just getting into the SuperLega, that's kind of a confusing thing.
Yeah, let me also point out another thing. If you're used to FIVB ranking, SuperLega uses another kind of rankings, in the sense that it's points first.
That's right.
So victories count less than points. So if you win a match on tiebreak, you get 2 points. If you lose a match on tiebreak, you get 1 point. or either way, you get 3 points for victory and no points for losing in less than in 4 sets or less. So the other two tournaments are the Italian Super Cup, which is usually played at the it used to be played at the beginning of the season, before the season. Now it's played at, I think we already have the dates. Just let me check real quick.
I was looking, I couldn't find them.
Yes, we have them, and it's on October 31st and November 1st.
Okay.
And they will be played in Cagliari, which stirred a bit of controversy because it's on an island and pretty far away from everyone. But aside from that, its seeding is based on the previous season. So the 4 teams that qualified for semifinals in the previous season will face each other in a classical Final Four format. So semifinals and final, do or die. And yes, that's pretty much there is to it for the Super Cup. Instead, the Coppa Italia, the Italian Cup, the ranking is made at the end of the first leg of the first round robin, what we call the Andata round. So the first 8 teams qualify for Coppa Italia. There is quarterfinals, semis, and the finals are all played in a do or die single match. But the quarterfinals are played in the home court of the best seeded team, while semifinals and final are played in a single venue. They still have to announce the venue, but the last 4 editions have been played in Bologna, so it's likely that they will play in Bologna this year as well. And that's pretty much it. And if you win the Coppa Italia, you have some kind of bragging rights, meaning that the following season you'll have this little emblem on your shirt, meaning that, hey, I'm the Coppa Italia holder.
Right. So these like the Super Cup in the early part of the season, the Coppa Italia mid-season, like that's a common thing for European sports from what I've noticed. But ultimately, like it's hard to say they really matter that much. I think it is just for bragging rights because it doesn't actually affect the standings or the playoffs or any qualification for next year or anything like that. So they're fun and they certainly do matter for pride and bragging rights, but they don't like explicitly affect the standings for the season. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's of course soccer of course works in a different way because it's more spread out through the year.
Right.
But yeah, basketball works exactly the same way, or pretty much in a very similar way. And yes, so Coppa Italia is one of those competitions in which if you're eliminated, it's not a big deal. But once you reach like the semifinals or the finals, you kind of want to win it. So it's if you're like a top 4 team, it's still pretty embarrassing to be eliminated like in quarterfinals, and you can be sure that
Lube Nova from last year.
Yeah, you can be sure that if you're like Lube and you get kicked out in quarterfinals, the other fans will probably mock you. But at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal.
And this same format goes for a lot of the European leagues. So like we could talk about Vakıfbank Istanbul on the women's side last year, winning 5 trophies. So that was like Super Cup, Turkish League, Club World Championship, and Champions League. So 3 of those 5 trophies are in your own country, and that's just
they really needed to go. No?
Yeah, sure. They totally needed to take her away, huh? That's another conversation. Last but not least, before we jump into breaking down the teams, the most important thing about the SuperLega is the foreigner rule, or the restrictions on the number of foreigners that you can have, and this varies for the leagues around Europe. Other than Germany, which literally doesn't have a foreigner restriction, Italy is actually one of the friendliest ones, and that, to be super clear, of the 7 players that are either in your starting lineup or on the court in like the regular rotation at all times, 3 of those 7 must be Italian. So that's like the 6 normal players and the libero. Those 7 players, 3 of them must be Italian at all times. And so that is a huge thing to remember for how teams construct their rosters. And a couple very interesting pieces of news as we get to some of the higher ranked teams later on, of players choosing to like pursue Italian citizenship later on in their career, so they don't count against that limit.
Yeah, and if you're watching this for the first time and you feel a bit confused by this rule, just remember that sometimes even the general managers of the Italian teams don't understand this rule. Seriously, I remember a couple of times ago, Lube, so not exactly the last team joining Superlega, made some confusion and they signed Grebennikov, thinking that having him and an Italian libero would count as an Italian player, but it doesn't. So they basically used Grebennikov as an outside hitter for most of the season, and they used Pesaresi as the official libero, let's say, because otherwise they couldn't comply with the Italian restrictions. So don't be afraid if you don't get it the first time.
Yeah, you're in good company if
Yeah.
a general manager of a championship level team doesn't understand the rules. So I think without further ado, I think let's jump into some of the teams. And one of the reasons why I brought Tommy on here, not only does he know so much about all this, but he is the author of one of the great resources of trying to follow along with this league, especially in the off season, which is the famous Tommy Blizzard transfer spreadsheet. And I'm going to put the link to it in the YouTube chat right now. You all can check this out and read through all the things. Tommy does a great job of keeping track of every team, their transfers that come in the offseason, their transfers that leave in the offseason, and then a projection of who their starting lineup is going to be. So this is basically a show summarizing the offseason's worth of the work that Tommy has put in on this transfer spreadsheet. So, Tommy, I believe it has been decided by the people in the chat that we're going to start from the bottom.
Yes.
We're going to start, which I like. I really like that. And that brings us to the team that is getting promoted from the A2 division last year, and that is Sienna. Sienna returns to the Superlega this year as the 12th team. We say goodbye to Vibo Valencia and Ravenna, having probably the worst season in Superlega history.
Yeah,
there were two
Ravenna
teams.
Was embarrassing.
Terrible. So bad. I mean, you did a great job picking it on last year's show. I remember you and Everett both said this might be the worst roster ever assembled in Superlega history, and sure enough, it was. But with those two teams leaving, one team gets promoted. It is Sienna, who they've played in the Superlega before. I remember them like 2018, 2018 and 19. They had like Yuki Ishikawa, and they brought Maruf in to set, but they ended up being really bad and got relegated almost immediately, right?
Yeah, and they first of all, Siena didn't actually get promoted because the Serie 2 was actually won by Reggio Emilia.
I remember this,
but they didn't have. I don't think it was. I hope Monty will forgive me because he is from Reggio Emilia, but I think it was more like an arena issue because the arena Reggio Emilia has been undergoing some renovation. They are late on the works, so they couldn't find a place to play to, so they had to give up the rights to Siena. And as you remembered, they played just once in Superlega in the 2008 to 2019 Superlega. They were embarrassing.
They were really bad.
Yeah, because their roster name were actually pretty good. They were all famous player, but they managed to get relegated in a championship where, if you remember, Castellana had a Ravenna-like season. They won just 2 games out of 24. And Siena won just 1 more game. They won just 3 games. But they had so much more points because they went like 12 times to tie break, losing 10 of them, something like that. And so in the end, they got relegated to A2, and this year they're back. And I think this year they made some kind of the same, I wouldn't say mistake. It's too early to say that, but the logic is kind of the same. I see some pretty washed up player. I mean, I'm a Modena fan, so I have all the love of the world for Nema Petric. But even when he played last time in Modena 2 years ago, he didn't seem like his old self. And now he has two more years. I think he's like 35 years old or something.
He's pretty old, 1987. So yeah, 35.
Then you have Van Garderen, who didn't really do a good job when going on from the bench last year in Modena. Pinali spent pretty much the whole championship on the bench. Mazzone did not have a very good year. So I'm not that thrilled, to say the least. For Siena, I think they are mm, depending on how things go, they can avoid relegation maybe, but if they get relegated, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. And the goal of every team that gets promoted to the Superlega or to like from the second division in any country to the top league, their goal for year number one is to stay there. Their
Yeah,
goal is to not get
definitely.
relegated. So we had Taranto last year succeeded. They and even with two teams getting relegated, they weren't one of them. One because of how bad Ravenna was, but that's the goal for Siena this year is do not get relegated. And sure enough, they kind of are like a Modena washed up reject team because they brought in Martin Van Garderen from last year. They brought in Nemanja Petric from the past. Those will probably be their two starting outside hitters. They got Daniele Mazzone, their former middle. Fabio Ricci played for like meaningful minutes for Perugia for several years. So honestly, that middle blocker duo is not bad.
No, that Ricci is also he was a national team candidate. He was supposed to go to the World Championship. So he's actually a good player. So, and even Bonami made a very good season last year. He was one of the
Verona,
best.
right?
He was one of the best liberos in terms of reception efficiency. So it's not a bad deal. It's the other players that don't really. Also, and also they signed the wrong pet.
Yeah, you if you're looking at the screen, you see I have a list of the coach, notable bench, and transfers out. So transfers out, there were too many to list. Just so much moving of their players last year because they needed to build a roster of Superliga quality. They had to bring a lot of people in. But they brought in Ingapet from Modena. But not that Ingapet. they brought in Irvin's little brother Swan. Yeah, they wish. So they bring in Swan Ingapet as like their third outside hitter. We might see him. He's he's nothing special. He's just kind of been riding Irvin's coattails for his whole career. Their setter is this guy named Juan Finoli, who I don't really know anything about, an older Argentinian guy. Well, he's not that old. He's only 31. But I mean, I've talked about it a lot on shows in the past. I have absolutely no faith in Giulio Pinali. I have no faith in this guy. I have no idea how he was on the World Championship roster. And I think that the downfall of this Sienna team will be the wings. Like Petric is a little too old. Van Garderen isn't really a scorer, and I just don't think Pinali is very good. So I think that will be the ceiling for this team.
Yeah, I was surprised as well. I was convinced that since the Georgi fired Zaitsev, I thought Stefani was the logical next step.
Me too.
But instead, he called Pinali, who spent the whole year on the bench. He wasn't necessarily bad 2 years ago when he played in Ravenna. He was the starting opposite there. He did pretty good on serving and blocking, but he was, I think, the dead last opposite in terms of
terrible attacking.
He had something like 43%, and which is very, very bad for an opposite. It's barely acceptable, or even slightly unacceptable for an outside hitter. So it's even more unacceptable for an opposite.
Right. Yeah. Pinali's a good server and a good blocker, but just a terrible attacker. And I mean, it's very informative. You can really pull a lot of meaning at the end of a Superlega season. You can just rank the opposites in terms of kill percentage, and you can really learn a lot from that. A guy like Pinali attacking for the whole season, I just do not trust him. They do have a backup in Federico Pereira from Argentina, but he's a little bit older. So, yeah, I think that's really about it for Siena. I think their goal is to not get relegated, and I think that they can do that because I think that their middles are good enough. Their reception unit is good enough. While Van Garder and Petric aren't great attackers, they are pretty good receivers, and you complimented Bonami earlier. So I think this team can succeed in staying in the Superliga. We'll talk about later who our other potential relegation candidates are. Ready to move on to the next team?
Yep.
All right. Coming up next is Pallavolo Padova. So Padova finished 11th last year, one spot out of relegation position. They barely survived, and then they made a lot of moves. This is not a very similar team to last year's Padova team. So they bring in Davide Saita from Vibo Valencia to set. They bring in Asparuhov from Verona at outside hitter. They still have Ron Takahashi, but they also get this Matisse Desmet character, who I actually like, a young Belgian kid from Nakru Solare who's coming to play in Italy for the first time. So like those three, Asparuhov, Desmet, and Takahashi will rotate at outside hitter, I think. And then they bring in Dusan Petkovic at opposite, who Everett and I have talked about. We're not particularly high on him.
Yeah, me neither.
Volpato in the middle is one of their previous guys from last year. Crosato was on the roster last year but never played. And then for some reason they bring Julian Zenger from Trentino. That's a tough move. A tough move
Yeah.
for Zenger to go from playing in a Champions League final to playing for Padova the following year.
Well, as I said, I agree with you and Everett on Petkovic. I remember his last Superlega year in Sora. He actually scored a lot of points, but ultimately Sora got relegated also because, as for Pinali, he attacked with a very, very low kill percentage. And if I remember correctly, like 40% of Sora's attacks came from him. So it was more like a desperation move. And of course, if you attack like 40 balls per game, you're going to score a lot of points, even if your kill percentage sucks. So I'm not you. If he's the guy who is supposed to save Padova, I have bad news for you.
I couldn't agree more. That this is a weird offseason for them because they lose Mattia Botolo, who's gonna be a really good player. They lose Eric Lepke, who had a bad summer on the national team, but had a pretty decent year last year. And they bring in Asparuhov, who I don't like very much. And they lose Linus Weber and replace him with Dusan Petkovic. I mean, it's almost like they're trying to get relegated with some of these moves.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been Padova's problem. Padova doesn't have a lot of money to splash on volleyball, so pretty much every year it's kind of what happened with Ravenna in the past years. They kind of found some hidden gems somewhere. But while Ravenna used to take them from abroad, Padova has a really good youth academy. They like to bring on the senior team most players from the youth academy, as you can see with Crosato. And of course, though the best players are prone to accept the more lucrative offers from more wealthy teams. And there was also a controversy last year. I don't remember if it was the chairman of the general manager. A couple of weeks before the regular season ended, he had a very controversial interview saying because Padova was doing pretty good, they were in playoff contention until the very last week.
They made the Coppa Italia. They were the 8th seed in the Coppa Italia. And then they totally tanked in the end of the year.
Tanked pretty bad. And this guy said, "Yeah, I'm not surprised by that because." Most of the players already signed with the other teams, something that should be technically forbidden. And he said, I'm not going to make names, but you'll see them when they sign with next year's teams. And so he was probably referring to Bottolo and maybe also to Weber, who went to Poland, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's correct.
And yes, of course, every year they have to maybe not start from scratch, but something very similar from starting to scratch. And yeah, I'm not big on Asparuhov as well. He played a couple of years in Verona with Stoichev, who is a Bulgarian like him, who is supposed to be the guy who found him, and he didn't really amaze. He had a couple of okay games, but in the end, he was very inconsistent. So he will have to prove himself in Padova, and it's of course not a guarantee that he will succeed. I'm very curious about this Desmet guy, but I think that in order for Padova to avoid relegation, this Desmet guy should be like the next Rok Mozic or something, because otherwise I think they are maybe the most likely candidate for relegation.
I kind of agree with you. I think in my list it's either them or Chisterna, who I honestly think are most likely to get relegated. We'll get to them in a minute, but I mean, spending a foreigner spot on a libero is also an interesting move. I wasn't impressed by Volpato last year, and I don't know anything about Crosato. I don't think that either of those guys can really be like SuperLega caliber middles for a whole season. And we already talked about Petkovic. I mean, if you're relying on him to save you from relegation, we've got bad news for you. There was a question in the chat before we move on about Davide Gardini. So a lot of American fans will know him. He's the son of a legend, obviously. He played in the university here in the States at BYU. There's a question is he any good? He is big, but is he good? I have a pretty simple answer to that, and that's no. But Tommy, what's your opinion on Davide Gardini?
I actually think you know him better than I do, since you followed him on NCAA. I just watched him on the very few times that he was called up for the with the national team, and he seems to me that he still has much to learn. I think he has potential. I actually think he can become a decent mid-table starter. But I don't see him having the potential that his father was, that he became an all-time great. But we'll see. We'll see. I think he has some pretty athletic talent. So I mean, the other thing is he can learn. But
absolutely.
But we'll have to see how fast he can learn, because SuperLega is very unforgiving, even for Italians.
Yes, even for Italians, and even though he's probably not going to see that much court time, he will learn a lot. He'll learn more than he probably ever did in the NCAA. But reception is his biggest weakness by far, and anybody who's watched him play in the NCAA will know that pretty clearly. So we'll see how quickly he develops if he sees some time. But I mean, I think reception might be an issue for this team, and you have Ron Takahashi, that's basically his only strength. So they will have a couple of interchangeable pieces at outside hitter to put on there. And maybe we see someone like Asparuhov at opposite if Petkovic is bad, because we even saw that at the World Championship for Bulgaria. Who knows? I think you and I, Tommy, are on the same page. Padova, definitely a relegation candidate. It'll be something to watch.
Yeah. It breaks my heart, because I always liked Padova. I like the fact that they give a lot of space to their youth academy guys. But this year, I have a very bad feeling about them.
Yeah, and I agree. They do tend to develop their own players pretty well, but then unfortunately they can't afford the good players that they develop once they get really good. I don't like the offseason moves that they made. I don't like Petkovic. I don't like Asparuhov. I don't understand getting Zenger, like spending money on him, because he's really good and you probably could have used that money elsewhere. So I think this is just a poorly made roster, and I don't have great feelings about it either. All right, let's move on to a team that we got to know last year, having played their first season in the SuperLega, and that is Taranto. Not Toronto in Canada, Taranto in southern Italy. Is this the only team this year in the southern part of the country still?
I think so. Let me check real quick, but I think so.
Yeah, because no Vibo Valencia, no Reggio Emilia, right? So I think it's just
Reggio Emilia is actually in the north.
Oh, are they? Okay.
It's close to Modena and Bologna.
Oh, got it.
But Chisterna is in the middle, a little bit south of the middle, but they are the only real southern team this year.
Yeah, if you're watching, take a look on Toronto on the map, how far away it is from most of the rest of the league. But they joined the league last year. They got promoted after winning Serie A2 2 years ago. Check out this roster. Look at all the blue. They have exactly one foreigner in the starting lineup. One. It's crazy. I've never seen a SuperLega team with this many Italians. And that one foreigner is none other than the Canadian darling Eric Lepke. And I know I saw Everett in the chat earlier. I think he had to leave to go to work, but we've had plenty of comments about Eric Lepke last year playing in Padova, and this summer being, quite frankly, very disappointing on the Canadian national team. As the one foreigner that Toronto was able to go out and get, I'm a little bit confused by that offseason strategy. But at the same time, as I look at this roster, it's not bad. I think Marco Falaschi is a good setter. I think Imoni Aletti is an underrated middle. I think I don't really like Oleg Antonov all that much, but he's a SuperLega quality outside hitter at least. And I think the real thing is that we finally get to see Tommaso Stefani play an entire season and start the entire time. At least I hope so. It killed me to watch him sit the bench behind Giulio Sabi all of last year. So, Tommy, tell us about this Tommaso Stefani kid. What do you expect from him this year at the opposite?
Well, as we say in Italy, you're just breaking through an open door, because I always liked him. I followed him since he was playing with the youth national teams. He won pretty much all there was to win with the youth national teams. And this, I remember, there was this. Was it Red Auerbach, I think, that said that I can teach a player everything, but I can teach him to be tall, something like that.
You can't teach height is something that we
Yeah.
say in the U.S. all the time, and yeah, sure enough,
Yeah.
I was just
And
looking up
this,
Stephanie's height, 2 meters 10,
yes.
210. He's massive.
Yeah, and I mean, before the World Championship, before noticing that except the libero, all the 6 starters were 2 meters or taller, we were insisting on the fact that we needed someone who was a bit more physical, and Stephanie is all that. He's you would say a 7-footer, and the guy he showed something last year. I mean, he spent 2 seasons warming the bench, and if I remember correctly, the first season he was actually warming the bench for Pinali, which is not exactly an achievement.
And, but he's young, though. He was born in 2001. He's only 21 this year. So it makes sense, but it's definitely about time that he really gets to be the full-time starter.
Yeah, absolutely. Season. Absolutely. We always joke about the fact that in Italy, you're young until you're 40 or something like that. And but yes, now it's definitely his time to shine. He has a good chance. Last year, he gradually overtook Sabbi for the starting opposite role. He showed some very good things. He had some 20 pointers in the season, and it showed that he can use that body. He is a very good server, and he can swing that arm pretty good. He's a bit rough of course, on some part of the games. He doesn't have many offensive directions. He needs to work on that, of course. Sometimes he looks like more of let's say old-fashioned opposite that you get the set, you don't really think about the block, or you don't know what a lob is. You just go for it, just throw it with everything you've got. So you need to be more mature on that side of this game. But I really like him, and I think he's going to have a great chance. And also Falaschi is a good setter. He had a great breakout season last year. You remember that he was supposed to be Gianelli's backup in Perugia. Then Travizza didn't want to leave. He already had contract. So he basically was dumped to Taranto. And he had a terrific season. He was called up for the VNL. He also played, I think, a couple of games.
Yeah, he did. I was there. I saw him play in VNL in Ottawa. And yeah, I randomly commentated a couple of Toronto games early last season and got to know a couple of these guys, like the ones that are still there. And I was impressed by Falaschi. And he's old. He's 35, I think.
Yeah, he's born in 87, I think.
Yeah. And
he played a couple of years in Poland.
Really impressed by him. So, I mean, we will definitely have our eyes on Eric Lepke for this Toronto team, for those North American fans that have followed his career. But don't be at all surprised if by the end of this season, you see the name Tommaso Stefani atop a lot of scoring lists. He's just going to get a lot of volume. Would you agree, Tommy, that his play style is kind of like an Adis Lagumja of sorts? Kind of a similar body. They move kind of similarly. But if Stephanie can learn the range and the vision that Lagumja has, he can be a really good player.
Yeah, I really like your comparison because I think it's very spot on. They both have this big body, which they also have to learn how to manage it because we saw it especially on the women's league. If you have this big body and the game goes to fifth set, you're much likely to be tired at the end of the game, and if you're the go-to guy of your team is going to be in big trouble. So they have to learn how to manage also their stamina. But I think that if the other eaters are Lepke and Antonov, you may want to build some stamina because I mean, with all due respect, neither of them looks like a reliable offensive weapon. And I still have faith in Lepke, even if I think last year he didn't play that well. When Padova signed Takahashi, he often subbed Lepke. You already said that the World Championship it was a disaster, but he's still young. I think he still has to play his cards. He still can grow as a player. And on the other side, I really don't like Antonov.
No, me
But,
either.
but I'm curious to see how this Andreopoulos and this extra guy will fare, because sometimes you get the Ravenna luck, you get some kind of diamond in the dirt, and who knows, maybe one of them would be one of these guys.
Yeah, this Andriopoulos kid, Greek kid born in 2001. Maybe we see him. This Ekstrand kid, Swedish kid born in 2003. So a couple crazy young prospects that are at least on the Toronto roster, and I don't expect to see him early on, but you never know. Maybe yeah, exactly like you said, when Ravenna used to find these absolute gems out of nowhere, like Kamil Rikliski is a big one that they found out of nowhere several years ago, and look where he is now. So yeah, this Toronto team, Italian loaded. Definitely look at Eric Lepke and definitely looking at Tommaso Stefani. I don't think this team gets relegated. I don't know if they make the playoffs, but I think they've got a great chance to stay in the league another year.
Yeah, I would say mostly because there are worse teams, but they have
there are worse teams. All right, let's move on. The next team is one that I'm very excited to look at. Verona. Verona had a surprisingly fun season last year. They were really interesting. You obviously had the breakout performance of Rok Mozic, one of the great young prospects in the world. And then this offseason, they went out and they made some moves. They have assembled a team that is going to be fun. If nothing else, they will be really fun. The outside hitter duo of Rok Mozic and Gord Perrin of Canada coming to Italy is something that I'm really excited to see. I think those player styles with the experience of Perrin and the young just explosiveness of Mozic, I think is a perfect pairing for them. Significant upgrade over Asparuhov. And then an even more interesting prospect, Nomori Keita, this young opposite from Mali in Africa, of all places, just played in the Korean League last year. He is going to be must watch. Every Verona match is going to be must watch. Even if he has a couple horrible games and loses them matches, it is going to be must watch to see the combination of Keita and Mozic play this year.
Yeah, I think that Verona was also a bit lucky last year, because for more than half of the season, I thought they were the most likely candidate to join Ravenna in a duel. But luckily for them, Nishida got injured in Vibo. Douglas left the team, so Vibo became the second worst team. But let's give them credit for having a really good second part of the season. They climbed up the ladder, and they also, I wouldn't say almost made the playoffs, but they got closer to playoff range. I think their main weakness is the setter.
Yes, because, I wanted to talk about that.
Because Spirito he was supposed to be the next big thing after Giannelli, but since he went back to Verona, he had a couple of seasons on loan. He was a pretty big disappointment. I mean, Verona basically turned around the season when Stoichev sent in Rafael, who was 42, and this year I think he's already 40. No, he will be 43 after week one.
1979, Rafael de Oliveira, the Brazilian legend, is still playing, and he's still playing in Italy. And Tommy, you're exactly right. I remember last season, the turnaround that Verona made was when they switched the setter. They benched Luca Spirito, they brought in a 42-year-old Rafael, and they played significantly better from that point on. So that's important to note, because Rafael is still there, but Spirito is Italian. So the move that they could maybe make, there's a couple. This is where we're getting some really interesting things about the foreigner limits. In the middle, Verona brings in Alex Grozdanov, because obviously when you have Radostin Stoichev coaching a team, he can't have a team without at least one Bulgarian.
Of course.
So he brings in Grozdanov from Monza, and Grozdanov's really good. I think he's the best middle on this roster, if you ask me.
By far.
But you also have Leandro Mosca, who's a young Italian middle prospect who is on the World Championship roster. He's massive. How big is he? I'm looking at the roster. 209. So he's massive. And then you have Lorenzo Cortesia, who I don't like that much, but he can definitely play in the Superlega. So if you want to bring in Rafael to set, you need to bring in probably Cortesia for Grozdanov and have those two Italian middles.
Or you can also have it's of course more risky, but Magalini is an interesting prospect. He won the under 21 World Championship last year. He is very good. He's a very good passer. Of course, he has to develop his offensive game, and of course, you won't bench Modric for that. You would likely bench Perrin, but it's of course a much more riskier move. But I think Magalini is going to develop into an interesting player, because even last year he went in and mostly for Asparuhov and made his contribution. He scored like 12 points in 3 sets, something like that.
I remember that. There were several games that either I watched or I commentated that Magalini came in because they wanted to bring in Raphael. They needed another Italian. They brought Magalini in. He played well. I agree. I like that kid as a prospect. He's a 2001, so he's another really young guy and can be one of the options if you need another Italian in the lineup to balance like something else that you want to do, like maybe put Raphael into set. The last prospect I want to talk about on this Verona team is this Sapozhkov character, Maxim Sapozhkov, 2 meters and 20, 220. He's Russian. He's born in 2000, so he's really young. Who did he play for last year? Some Russian team that I've never heard of, but he's coming over to Italy at 2 meters and 20. He's got to be the tallest player in the league.
Yeah,
and
by far.
By far. And I'm just fascinated just to see him even just like move around and just see him in hitting lines and warm-ups. Like, well, Tommy, do you know anything about this guy?
Absolutely nothing. I know that he is an opposite and not a middle. And I remember
he is an opposite.
The tallest guy I've ever seen was Alexei Kazakov back when he was playing in Modena.
I remember Kazakov, big middle.
And he was 217, so this guy is actually 5 centimeters taller. And I remember looking at Kazakov like this, and I'm not a volleyball player, but I'm not small either. I'm 186, and I was like, hey. So yes, this guy is massive, of course, and I think they signed him for 2 main reasons. One, of course, because Stoichev likes tall players. I remember when he coached Modena, he actually brought in Jensen for training, but back then he was still a setter, so it was a pretty oversized.
I remember that from his.
It was a pretty oversized setter. And another reason is that we just talked about Jensen. Jensen will be out until November, maybe even December. He underwent surgery. So, of course, Keita is going to have a really good chance at starting opposite. And Sapozhkov is probably being signed just as a temporary backup for the opposite position. And we will see if they will keep him for like training when Jensen comes back, or we'll see what happens. But other than that, I don't really know anything about this Sapozhkov guy.
Well, it's hard not to be interested when you see 220 on the roster in the height. That's ridiculous. But the prospect that I'm more excited about, now that we kind of know Rock Mosic, we saw him for a year, led the league, or was top 3 or 5 in the league in almost every category last year. I'm really excited to see Nomori Keita play. I mean, he's 2 meters and 6. He's born in 2001. He comes from just an obscure volleyball country in Mali in Africa. He's been playing in Korea, which is a league that encourages a guy to try and score 40, 50 points a game. I cannot wait to see if he can really be a SuperLega caliber opposite for this year. And with Mosic across from him, I think this team might be kind of good. This team could make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it's boom or bust. I mean, if all things go well, they can do really, really well. I think they can even aim for like 6th place or something. But if Keita doesn't really adapt to SuperLega, and if Mosic has to carry the team back again, I don't see them, of course, as a relegation candidate, but they may fail the playoff this year as well. It depends on a lot of things.
6th, I think, might be a little bit too high. I could definitely see 7th easily and get I mean, they're probably still going to lose in the first round of the playoffs, but there are going to be some really fun Verona matches along the way this season. They're just going to be an entertaining and interesting team to watch. So I'm excited for them. All right, moving on to the teams that made the playoffs a season ago. So we're starting to get into teams that have had some success here lately. Starting off with last year's 8th seed Chisterna. Chisterna had a terrible offseason. They don't even have like hardly a full roster. I was looking at your spreadsheet, Tommy. I was looking on Volleyball. I don't even think they have 12 guys on the roster yet. It's been very, very
if you go onto
confusing
the
for them.
Lega Volley website, those are the guys. I mean, they haven't officialized any other move. So as of right now, they have like 11 players, I think, something like that.
That is rough. And they did make the playoffs this season ago. They had a nice late push, but Stephen Marr last year, another Canadian guy, was their guy. He was the only guy that was actually healthy the whole year. Arthur Schwartz got hurt. They had a bunch of guys got hurt. But Marr was the man, and he carried all the offense. And now this year he is off to Monza. So no more Stephen Marr for Chisterna. And they didn't really go out and get anybody significant. I mean, they go out and get Efe Bayram from Turkey, who we really like, a friend of the program. Then this Sedlacek character, like a Croatian outside hitter from 1996 that I've never heard of. And Petar Dirlic is a Croatian opposite that played a little bit last year. Michele Baranovic setting, Aiden Zingle, like an old Australian middle. I think Damiano Catania's good at libero, but I just don't know anything about this team. I don't see the depth or like the top level talent to really compete in the SuperLega, even though I did see on Volleyball like maybe a rumor that Denis Caliberda is going to sign for him. I don't know. I really have my doubts about this Chisterna roster.
Well, I never heard about this Caliberda rumor, but I think that we can all agree that it won't be a game changer, probably.
Nah.
But I would be a little more generous towards Petar Dirlic, because actually last year he was supposed to be a Schwarz substitute, but when Schwarz injured himself, he delivered. He actually delivered.
Yeah, he was good.
He had pretty good numbers, and so I'm expecting him to keep up these good numbers. And I know Efe Bayram very little. I actually know Marko Sedlacek because he played in Monza a couple of years ago. He was a substitute for the outside hitters, but there was a time, I think it was the COVID shortened season, and if I remember correctly, the Monza had some kind of injury trouble. I don't remember if it was Jevonorok who was injured or he was playing poorly. But this Sedlacek guy ended up playing pretty good minutes, and he actually played good in those minutes. So I don't know how or even if he improved over the years, but I would keep an eye on him because I think he has the potential to be a surprise. Maybe not a Mosic level surprise, but it could be a surprise.
Okay, I'm just really curious. This is probably the team. I think this is the team even more so than like Sienna or Toronto. Or I know the least about this roster of probably any team in the league, and I think that kind of makes them a wild card. I would not pick them to make the playoffs just because I don't know anything. Maybe they won't get relegated, but it's curious. It's like a mixture of pieces that I don't really know, and then therefore I have no idea how it's really going to turn out. So there's a wide range of possibilities for how Chisterna's season is going to go.
Yeah, I'm also interested in how Catania will fare. Last year he was the reserve libero. Was supposed to be the reserve libero in Piacenza
until Bernardi decided to start him an outside hitter a couple times.
Yeah, but I mean it's something that sometimes it happens. You make your backup libero wear a normal jersey, let's say, so he can do the back row rotation. But this guy was actually named the best libero at the Under-21 World Championship last year. So this guy has potential, and now that he has this chance to start, we'll see how he does.
Yep, that was a name that popped out to me too, is Catania. I know he's highly regarded as a libero prospect. All right, let's move on to 7th place from last year was Vero Volley Monza. And if you follow the women's side, you've seen the ascendancy of the Monza program the last couple of years. They're trying to do the same on the men's side. Their budget seems to me to be increasing from an outside perspective, and they're starting to go out and build some pretty good teams. They're still struggling to be consistent and like beat teams that are better than them consistently. But I really like a couple of the moves that they made. The big one for me is they brought in Cachopa to set. What a massive upgrade over Santiago Orduna. Cachopa is likely the future of the Brazilian setter position. I mean, we saw at this World Championship. He's the guy. He's the guy and has an immediate chance to be one of the best setters in the league this year. And other than that, the roster is almost the same with the exception of losing Verona to Trentino and bringing in Steven Marr. And that's a really good one-for-one switch. They still got Jurgi Grozer, but there was a moment last year when Grozer got hurt and they needed a backup and they didn't have one. And now they do. They have Arthur Schwartz. He's going to play opposite, not middle for this Monza team. I like this team. I would definitely pick them to make the playoffs again.
Of course, I think that it would be a huge disappointment if they don't make the playoffs. As you said, Cachopa is an extremely interesting signing. I mean, he basically, I wouldn't say kicked out Bruno of the Brazilian team, but he kind of did midway through the World Championship. Marr had a terrific season last year. Davis Kiba I think he's a 2001. I think he's very, very young and is a very interesting prospect. After 1 year in the bench last year, he was promoted to starter and he played a very consistent. Played very consistently last year.
I think that's a really good pairing, him and Marr. I think they're the perfect like classic outside hitter 1, outside hitter 2 combination.
And then let's not forget about the middles. I mean, you have Galassi, which I would say with a bit of controversy was called up in the World Championship Dream Team.
That was ridiculous.
It was. But he's still a more than decent middle. He has a good serve and he's a good blocker. And watch out for Gabriele Di Martino as well. He had a terrific season last year in Taranto.
I loved Di Martino last year in Taranto. He was really, really good, and I'm excited to see him start for a playoff level team.
And of course, you have you have some kind of question mark on Grozer because he's my age and I just turned 37. So, and also he's been a bit injury prone in the last couple of seasons. And speaking of injuries, we'll have to see how Schwark came back from the injury because it was a pretty serious one.
Yeah, torn ACL. But I mean, he played at World Championships. I mean, he was clearly not quite back yet, and he played middle blocker rather than opposite, and those are different in terms of demands on your body. But if and when Grozer gets injured, or at least just needs to take a couple games off through this season, Schwartz is more than a capable backup opposite. I'm excited to see him play this year.
Yeah, of course. And the last thing, it's going to be a very crucial season for Federici because he was supposed to go to the European Championship last year, then he got injured. And but last year he was like the second worst libero for passing efficiency, and he got benched a couple of times for Gaggini, who is like 19, and
I remember
he's another player to watch out in Verona. So this season he has to deliver because even if he's still young, he was really, really disappointing last season. And if he doesn't deliver this year, as we said earlier, SuperLega is very unforgiving, so I can see Monza unloading him for another libero.
I think that's a good point. Federici's born in 2000, so he's just starting to get to that point in his career where he should be expected to be a SuperLega quality libero the entire year. And obviously with how the foreigner rules are and how rosters are built, a lot of liberos will end up being Italian. Just because it's the least logical place to spend money on a foreigner. So you need every good high-quality Italian libero you can find, and Monza needs him to be better.
Unless you have Zenger, of course.
Unless you're Padova, want to go out and pay Zenger. What a weird move. Yeah, I like this Monza team a lot. I can't wait to see Cachopa set a full Italian league season. If Grozer can stay healthy and he can, I mean, you said it, he's 37, but is still, when he's healthy, he looks the same as he always has. He's
Yeah.
a freak. So much fun to watch. Good middle duo. I like this Monza team a lot. They had a couple big upsets last year. Weren't they the ones? Didn't they beat Lube in the Coppa Italia quarterfinals?
They were.
Yeah. But then they lost a couple weird ones. I think they lost to Verona several times. They lost to bad teams. So they've got to be more consistent, but they have the talent to make the playoffs again.
But I think they also reached the Super Cup final when they lost to Trento, if I remember correctly.
That's right. Yeah, they beat. Oh, who did they beat?
I think they beat Perugia. No, or Perugia was beaten by Trento.
Yeah, maybe that's right. They definitely lost to Trento in the final of the Super Cup last year, but I don't remember who they beat. Might have been Lube again.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. So yeah, Monza, who knows? Kind of a fun wild card that can sometimes like punch above their weight class and beat good teams. So
yeah,
they're going to be a factor. Speaking of teams that are going to be a factor, Tommy, is this the year? Is this the year finally that Piacenza breaks through into the top 4 of the league? 6th last year, but it's been so long. It's been so long since anybody has really like consistently taken the big 4 Italian teams, that's Lube, Perugia, Modena, Trentino, since a team has really broken into that level. But Piacenza seems to be making the moves such that this might finally be the year.
Well, to be honest, it happened also 2 years ago in the post-COVID season when Modena was broke. So it was the season when they had Christensen and Grabenikov and
nobody else.
Yeah, and the rest of the team was pretty much trash.
I remember that team. that was the COVID year. Nobody had any money. I don't really think that counts. But like this, with Piacenza's club having existed like in the 2000s and the early 2010s, and then going under and then coming back under different ownership, they have made moves of like at least the level of budget of an elite level European club team. I mean, look at this roster. Antoine Brizard setting, Lucarelli and Leal, both Brazilians at outside hitter, Yuri Romano at opposite, and that's one that I'm really curious to talk to you about in a second, Tommy. And then they go out and they bring back Robert Landi Simone. They get the best middle blocker in the world. And I mean, I remember falling in love with Simone's early Piacenza highlights from like 2010 when him and Gicheco were there and they were doing just the most ridiculous things on offense. Like Gicheco was like overhead platform setting Simone these quick balls and all this ridiculous stuff. And like the glory days, finally they bring Simone back. And then they have either Kineski or Chester as second middle, doesn't matter. Scanferla, really good libero. This team, and then Recine, a really good Italian outside hitter in case they need to play with the foreigners. This team is stacked. This team is so good. And I think the only thing that can stand in the way of them, well, 2 things that can stand in the way of them really being a top 4 team. One is Bernardi, because I think as legendary of a player as he was, he continues to be an idiot as a coach. But second is Yuri Romano. What do you think, Tommy, after sort of the streaky, nice peaks of the World Championship for Romano, what do you think we can expect from him for a full season as a starter?
Well, let's start by saying that I completely agree with you with everything you said. I was about to say that Bernardi is one of his potential pitfalls of this Piacenza team, which, by the way, didn't change just the ownership. The team is technically brand new.
Okay.
It's technically a different team than the one that made you fall in love with Simone. But still, they are, I think, they are the second this year. This season they have been the second biggest spenders in the whole league. And
it has to be behind only Perugia, I would assume.
Yeah,
right?
and of course, if you are used to the American leagues, here we don't have any kind of salary cap, so bigger spenders usually have bigger chances to win. And yes, as you said, it's a very stacked team with a deep bench. And we'll get to Romano in a second, because there is also they also have a backup plan in case Romano doesn't deliver. They can actually move Leal to the right and promote Recine to a starter, so they can play Trentino style, let's say.
Yes.
And about Romano, it's going to be a very interesting year for him, because let's remember that despite being the starting opposite of the team that won the European Championship last year and the World Championship this year, last year it was actually his first year in the SuperLega.
That's right. He
He,
played A2 the year before that.
yeah, he's been one of the best scorer in the A2 in the last seasons, but last season, it was his first Superlega season, and he was a reserve. He was actually Patrice's backup in Milano, and he ended up playing very few matches also because he had some injuries to deal with. So he started preparation late. He had some physical problems. So when he played, he didn't really deliver his full potential. But this year he really has a golden chance. Because of course he played good in the world championship. He probably wasn't the best opposite, but I think it was clear in the top three. I mean, there are reports that even Kurek said off the record that Romano deserved the best opposite award more than him. But aside from that, he played an insane game against France.
Yes.
He turned the game around in the fourth set. He scored the 7-2 break, starting the tie break. And at the end of the day, he was really impressive about how complete he is, because he's a very good server, he's a decent blocker, and as an opposite, he's kind of a beast on defense. I mean,
he is a good defender. That's a good point.
I've seen very few opposite defend like him. And not just in like I'm throwing myself to the ball, but also in his sense of positioning. He seems to have some kind of a Rodman-esque sense of where the ball will head, and so he has a good position on defense. But
I also kind of like the way he seems to have the loss of short-term memory that I think for an opposite is good. Like if he makes a couple errors in a row, or if he bounces the ball straight down, he's not going to care, and he's going to be the same player the next point, no matter what happens the point before. And I think, I mean, it sounds like I'm calling him dumb. I'm not, because for an opposite, that is a good thing. That is a good thing for an opposite. And I mean, this with him and all the rest of this Piacenza lineup, I mean, think about this potential 6 servers: Brizard, Lucarelli, Simone, Romano, Leal, and then like a float serve of one of the middles. Like that, 6 servers in a row, no rotations off there. Could be one of the best serving teams we've ever seen.
Yeah, probably. I mean, Leal's serving has been going down in the last couple of seasons. Even last year, it was not that effective in Modena.
But then he was so good at the World Championship out of nowhere.
Yeah, that kind of surprised me.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, Romano, as we said, he has a good chance. I think he's one of those opposites that, in order to be effective, he needs to build a good connection with his setter. I don't really see him as one of the. I call him the Velasco spikers, because you know that one of the Velasco's most famous quote is spikers don't talk about the set, they just spike it, they just solve it. And I don't really see him like that kind of spiker, but I think if he can build a good connection with Brizard, he can do really well. And at the World Championship, he did develop a good connection with Giannelli, and we all see what happened. And yeah, overall, I think this Piacenza team has the potential to reach second place in the standings.
Second place.
If all things go well, I think they might even go better than Trento, but it's gonna be a very tough battle. Of course, things in Trento must not go as planned, because I think Trento has a slightly better team, but they have the potential to reach the second place. Just watch out for another potential pitfall, which lies in the name. Gas Sales Blue Energy. They are owned by an energy company, and with all the stuff going around, it's not that unlikely that they might undergo some financial trouble, even after all that spending, because as I said, with all the energy crisis going on, they are not in the most stable sector right now. So things could potentially go bad for them. But if that thing doesn't go, I really think I really see them as maybe not a Scudetto candidate, but a Scudetto final candidate, definitely.
I think that's clearly the goal with the moves that they've made in the offseason and the budget that they've had to bring in players of this caliber. I think it's crazy to say that they might be a second place in the regular season caliber team, but it makes sense. The team on paper is absolutely good enough to be that good after 22 matches. The question is, can they actually go out on the court and do it 22 matches in and out? And I think that lineup management might be an interesting thing for this team because, yeah, you're right. You have the option to move Leal to the right and bring in Recine. Bernardi has had a history of when he has choices that can be made, he makes too many choices and too often the wrong ones. I mean, he let Aaron Russell sit the bench the entirety of last year, which I'll never forgive him for. And I'm curious to see how he manages this lineup, if he is consistent enough or if he finds something that really works and sticks with it. I think he might be one of the things that can get in this team's way.
Yeah, I think it's his biggest weakness is stubbornness. I also remember when he absolutely tanked the Scudetto final against Lube, the first year.
When he coached Perugia, right?
Yeah, I mean, in that final, it was clear that Leon absolutely carried the team, of course, from beginning to end. But in the final, he was clearly struggling. He was probably also tired from all that carrying around. And Atanasievich was even worse, if I remember correctly.
That, yes.
And with the bench, Perugia he couldn't find the balls to make a move, to make a sub when it was clear that Perugia was sinking down. And last year you mentioned Russell. I mean, he's kind of a stubborn guy. So we'll have to see how he deals if Leal starts doing bad or Romano has some pretty bad games. So we'll have to see what happens.
We will have to see what happens. So, but yeah, the potential for Piacenza is definitely there. I think of the teams outside the top four that can go to the semifinals or maybe even the finals, I think they're the clear one. Let's move on. The last team outside of that elite top four that we talk about all the time is Milano. So Milano over 500 last year, finished 13-11. They lost in the quarterfinals. A great series against Modena, so they barely lost. Interesting team. They a very pretty different from last year. You still got Paolo Porro, the young Italian setter, who's really kind of the hinge point for this team and is going to determine a lot about how they can do. But they lose Thomas Jeschke, but they bring in Milad Abadapor, which is a move that I kind of like. And they still have Yuki Ishikawa. Those are two very good, experienced outside hitters. The question is, where are they going to get all their point scoring from? And the answer then should be from Jean Patry on the right side. But if you watch Milano last year, you saw a lot of issues with Porro being able to set Patry the ball. That connection was not very good and led to a lot of Milano either losing matches or sending Patry to the bench because they couldn't afford to bench their Italian setter. Curious to see about that. The other move they made that I really liked is they lose Bartolome Chinese, who's incredible, but they bring in Agustin Loser, the Argentinian middle who was unbelievable at World Championships, and I'm really excited to see him play in Italy. Then Matteo Piano or Marco Vitelli in the middle as another Italian, either one, fine. And then Pesaresi at Libero is good. What do you think, Tommy, about the Porro and Patry connection? Do you agree with me that that's probably the thing that held this team back last year the most?
Probably. It was surely an issue. I mean, Porro is very young. I think he's 21, 22, or even younger. And so he has all the time in the world to improve. But yeah, that connection with Patry really struggled last year, and it really held him down. And yeah, things didn't really with all, even with all the things we said about Romano's physical condition. It's not like with Romano that things got real better. I think he struggled a bit with his style of setting. So yeah, Porro might have to adjust some things in order to Milano to perform. And just a quick thing, you mentioned Loser, and I think he's. I heard that he's going to get Italian citizenship soon.
Wow, really?
But just to clarify the rules, in order to be considered an Italian in SuperLega, having citizenship is not enough. Otherwise, Bruno would count as an Italian for Modena as well. But you have to be potentially eligible for the Italian national team. So even if loser gets Italian citizenship, he won't be automatically considered an Italian. He has to ditch the Argentinian eligibility first, and I think sometimes have to pass. I think they also reformed the rules a little bit, so I'm not sure if that's still the case. But last time I checked, you have to be 3 years without playing in a national team in order to switch.
That's what I thought. At least that's what I thought it used to be. And there's quite the buffer period there. And I don't know if I can see Loser ditching his eligibility for the Argentinian national team.
But yeah, aside from that technical question, I think that I can't help but to see Milano as a disappointment. Why am I saying that? Because Milano is by far the biggest city represented in SuperLega. They have 1,300,000 inhabitants. The second largest is Verona, which doesn't reach 300,000. They have a brand new arena. They have a massive arena sponsor in Allianz Insurance. And last year they were linked to Lucarelli. They were linked to Zaitsev. They made offer to both of them, but ultimately both of them rejected Milano. And that tells us they weren't really happy with Patry, but they ultimately got with Patry. So that wasn't the plan for Milano, and I'm pretty sure having a Badipur starter wasn't the plan either. I think they were aiming for Lucarelli.
I remember that.
And so Milano wanted to be to aim at the top dogs, and this year they won't likely, as they didn't the previous season. But as you said, they're still an interesting team. They will easily make the playoffs, and I think that also the Mergarejo could find some space in the season. I don't think it's impossible that he gradually takes a Badipur place. It all depends on who's the quicker to adapt to SuperLega, because SuperLega, as we said multiple times, is pretty unforgiving. They're both foreigners, so they can be exchanged no problem. It not depends, because you saw some well-established player fail SuperLega. You saw some brand new players absolutely have an immediate impact on SuperLega. So I'm curious to see who's gonna win this outside hitter battle. Of course, Badipur is the clear favorite starting the season, but I don't see as impossible Mergarejo come back and take a Badipur's place.
Yeah, I think Osniel Mergarejo, a Cuban guy, good player, really good prospect, and has potential to see some minutes on this Milano team. I'm surprised they went out and got Milad Badipur, because Badipur spent so long in his career getting Polish citizenship and not counting against the foreigner limit in Poland. And that was a huge advantage for him playing there. And I'm surprised that, I mean, they must have paid him a lot to come to Italy and take that advantage away. Another thing that I want to bring up is a very technical, detailed thing about how Agustin Loser plays and about how he attacks. There's some of the things that we were seeing in the World Championship with him and DeCecco, and DeCecco is amazing, obviously. There are these really high-level, I call them drift patterns, where the middle attacker will jump, but he'll be jumping with his momentum moving to the side. So where the opposing blocker lines up against him is not where the attacker actually ends up. The attacker is jumping and drifting laterally. And the connection with the setter that you have to run those attack patterns that are really sophisticated is very, very demanding. And that's one of Loser's advantages. I mean, he's an outstanding fundamental blocker, but he's not that big. And he's not like going to be a straight up attacker where he's just going to run directly in front of the center every time and be able to hit the angles. He needs that movement and that spacing as an attacker. I'm not convinced that Porro is the caliber of setter that will work.
No, probably not. But I agree that loser movements kinda remind me of the fast attack in women's volleyball.
Ah,
a smaller scale, fast attacking. Of course, it's different. Of course, it's much quicker. But the way he drifts and that he moves the momentum on the outside, it kind of remind me of that pattern. But yeah, I completely agree that it's way too early to try that with Porro, and Porro still has to grow a lot before.
Oro still has to learn how to set Patry the ball before he focuses
Yeah.
on setting low set.
Let's start from the basics.
So I mean, I kind of agree with you. Milano has the talent; they'll make the playoffs easily. I think they could end up being a little bit disappointing. I think sixth is a reasonable spot to put them.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's move on to the top four. And this is the top four teams that have dominated Italian volleyball for years and years and years. And I'm excited to hear your thoughts, Tommy, on this one because you are a diehard Modena fan.
So look at the time, I have to
go. So let's talk about Modena, Tommy. You can't avoid this. You've given the Volleyball Source Discord a lot of great inside information about Modena over the years. There's so much that we've learned from you about this team. This is an interesting roster for Modena. They still have Bruno. They still have Irvin Ingapet. They still have Rossini at libero, and they still have my absolute hero, Daddy Stankovic, in the middle, who counts as an Italian. But a lot of other moving parts around that. No more Namir Abdelaziz. He's going to Turkey, of all places. And so they go out and get Adis Lagumzia, who I think is a really good opposite. But of an entire season of volume, I'm not convinced. They needed another middle blocker. They went and got Tobias Crick, of all people, which was a move I was kind of surprised by. And they needed another Italian in the starting lineup, so they go out and get a really good prospect in Tommaso Rinaldi, who will be their second outside hitter. We saw him play a lot at Chisterna last year. Does this particular Modena roster, I mean, their issue last year was depth. Very well may be a problem again this year, but do they have that talent in the starting seven to remain a top four team in the league?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
But of course, as you said, in the past of season, Modena went through some financial trouble, and most of all, they had these negotiations for an ownership change that went on much longer than they should have. So when they finally broke off with this Italian guy who is pretty famous in America, Mr. Giuseppe Vinci, the guy who founded Volumetrics. When the things broke up with him, they found a new ownership, but it was really late in the off season, so they had to deal with what's left, and that's the reason why they signed Crick, because there was pretty much they had a foreigner spot left after Dici Mazzone. So they said, okay, there's Crick available. Worst case scenario, he gets our TikTok followers up.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
Yeah.
I mean, why do you think Viva Valencia signed Nishida last year?
Yeah, but I mean, I think Crick is an improvement over at least last season Mazzone, last couple of seasons Mazzone. So
yeah, I agree with that.
It's not that bad of a signing. And then, of course, you talked about Lagumzia. I actually like him a lot.
Me too.
And he had a very good maiden SuperLega season 2 years ago in Monza. Problem is, Piacenza last year spent a lot of money buying him out because he still had like 2 years in his Monza contract. So I think they paid a pretty fairly large buyout to sign him. And he had a good start, but I mean, during the season, most time he has been subbed by Chisterna, who came up and saved the day. I remember the Italian Cup quarterfinals against Modena. Lagumzia had a terrible start. Then Stern went up and finished with something like 87% kills, something incredible. And but I saw him save the day in Piacenza more than once.
Yeah, the playoff series with Trentino was similar. I remember Stern coming in several times and being an improvement.
So this is going to be, of course, a transition year for Modena. We'll see what they can do next year when they can start the off season along with the other teams, and we'll see how this new ownership will fare in terms of economic firepower. But of course, you have to talk about the players who didn't deliver or partially deliver last season. And of course, you think of Bruno, who came back in Modena for the fourth time of his career with great expectations, but I think we can all agree that we underachieved pretty badly last season. He went back to his usual self in the latest part of the season, the playoffs, but for most of the regular season, he was almost unrecognizable. Ngapet did slightly better, but I think he was pretty out of shape. Of course, he had a very hard summer. He had the Olympics, then he had the European Championship. He was really tired. He was a bit overweight also as well.
Yeah, we've seen that from him before.
Yeah.
We've seen how it affects him. I mean, the match that France lost to Italy in the World Championship was a good example.
Yeah, and of course, Rossini, he's not the Rossini who won the Scudetto in 2006 with Modena.
No, I thought he was, frankly, pretty terrible last year.
Yes, especially on reception. In defense,
Yeah.
he delivered. He was pretty decent on defense, but when it came to serve receive, he was pretty bad. And then, of course, the most interesting thing is Tommaso Rinaldi. He was named MVP at the under 19 World Championship a couple of years ago. He spent a couple of years in Modena, and the last one training with a guy like Matt Anderson, and he said that he idolized him, and he was really excited to be training with him. Then he was loaned to Chisterna. He was a starter, but then he had some kind of a lukewarm season. He had some good games, some bad games. But I remember his best game was against Modena when he scored like 24 points and 6 aces. And after the game, he had some bitter comments saying like, in the post-COVID season, I expected to play more. So this was kind of a revenge game for me. And now he's back in Modena. He's back to start. So I don't expect him to score like 8 points per set. I mean, I would be thrilled if he does, but I don't expect it. But after that game, I expect him to give all he's got every game. He's still young. I think he's 22, 21 or something. So
he's 2001.
Yes,
so yeah, 21.
He's 21, so he has a lot of road ahead. But yeah, he needs to give all he's got in training. You have to give all he's got in matches. Gianni is usually a guy who works well with youngsters. And then, of course, there's another interesting young prospect in Lorenzo Pope.
I was just about to bring him up. Yeah, speaking of outside hitter prospects born in 2001, this Australian kid, Pope, that we met in VNL this year, I doubt we're going to see him that much on the court, but for his development, being in Modena's gym the entire season is going to be huge for him.
Yeah, I mean, I recently heard an interview with Gianni that said he had to actually hold him back in training because he said that he gives too much, he jumps too high, he jumps too many times, and he's really eager to play, to learn. And as I said, Gianni kind of has to hold him back because otherwise he will burn out before the end of the season.
That's a good problem to have, though, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. But since Modena is going to play in the CV Cup as well, he may have his chances. And maybe we could, if Rinaldi is not delivering, we could actually see Bossi coming in for Crick and Pope having his chance. And let's not forget that Modena right now has just 3 outside hitters.
Right.
It has been, it's not a rumor anymore. And they are trying to sign the Chinese outside hitter Zhang. And I don't think he will be able to provide a great contribution, but he will probably be useful as well. He won't be a game changer, but... yeah,
they just need somebody. They need somebody else in the gym. You can't play a whole SuperLega season with only 3 outside hitters.
No, especially if you have a European Cup as well.
No, exactly. So yeah, Modena will play CV Cup this year. I'm glad you brought that up. But yeah, of the teams who I think are most likely to drop out of that top 4, I think Modena is probably the most likely. No offense to your fandom, Tommy, but
I think I think best case scenario they finish 5th. So I agree with you. I don't think I gave them like 10% chances of finishing the top 4.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. But I mean, Modena's still a great home crowd, great culture, and fortunately, all the fans back in the stands this year. So that provides more of an economic boost to Modena than most clubs, if what I understand is correct.
Yeah, I confirm.
Okay, let's move on. We've got three teams left here, and the first one is a very interesting one. A team that really had a very innovative team from last year, had a lot of success and redefined a lot of things about how club teams think about some things. That's Trentino. And what
Yep.
I mean by that is what Trentino ended up doing last year is ditching the opposite position entirely. They said, "Who needs that? we don't need a guy across from the setter who bangs 35 balls a game and scores 20 points. We don't need that guy. We're going to put three outside hitters out there at all times and move things around and play around with different rotations and really use the versatility of our lineup." And they came out last year, shocked everybody by winning the Super Cup because nobody had seen that style before. Then teams started to slowly figure it out throughout the year. They went all the way to the finals of the Champions League. They beat Perugia in that semifinal before losing there, but then they eventually ran out of gas.
Insane game.
Yeah, all-time great,
Serious.
all-time great series. I had the pleasure of calling that for CV. That was a career highlight for sure. All-time great series. We saw the breakout of Alessandro Micheletto, of course, 2 years ago, but then they kind of ran out of gas in the Scudetto playoffs. However, they didn't really lose anybody. Well, all they lost was Julian Zenger, and then they bring in Gabriele Lorenzano, who's a young Italian libero prospect who I love. I loved him at Toronto last year, and that gives them even more freedom with the foreigners than they had before, because now they've got 4 Italians in the starting lineup. So the other guy they brought in was Donovan Javoranoka from Monza, the Czech outside hitter. So now they've got that same 3 outside hitter style that we expect them to play with Lavia and Micheletto as 2 of the main options. We assume that Lavia will line up opposite of Spertoli, the setter. And they've got the 2 great Serbians in the middle with Lisinac and Podrashinin. But they still have Matej Kaziski. So now they have way more options than they did last year in terms of outside hitters, and Kaziski's not getting any younger. So, Tommy, how do you see this Trentino team and Coach Lorenzetti, who did such a good job with them last year, how do you see them managing the roster with all these options now?
Well, they'll have to make some decisions, of course, because they will play in Champions League. And Champions League can be, I'm not saying as tiring as SuperLega, but they will surely add some stuff on their backs.
They're in a hard pool too. They're in Zaxa's pool, so they're going to get that Zaxa rematch in the pool stage of Champions League.
You again. And I mean, you said Kaziski is not going to get any younger, and of course it's true. But I mean, how long have we been saying that? I mean,
he was so good last year. It was crazy how good he was last year at age like 30, whatever.
Yeah, he's 1 year older than me, so he's 38.
Unbelievable. He was so good last year, and now he doesn't even necessarily have to play every game with Javornok in there, who I think he fits perfectly in the style.
Yeah. Of course, and he had a really good season last year in Monza. I mean, the first season in Monza, he clearly showed talent, but he was also a bit inconsistent. He could score like 20 points with 60% kills one game, and then I have like 28% kills the following game. Last season he was really consistent. I think he really, I wouldn't say he peaked, but he went much closer to his peak. And he's a really good addition to a team that was already good. As you said, it gives them more option. And but I think that they got better in the sense that some of their players got better in the meantime.
Yes.
I mean, take Lavia. Lavia had 2 years ago in Modena, he was kind of lukewarm. He was had a so-and-so season. Then he started complaining, I want to move to another team. Okay, I go to Trento. And then Lorenzetti moved him opposite. He played a really good season, but I think that he was one of the best players, and maybe after Giannelli was the best player of the Italian team.
Absolutely was. It was crazy that he didn't get like an all-tournament award or one of the best outsiders in the World Championship. He was awesome.
I mean, we talked about Galassi probably not deserving to be there, but Lavia absolutely deserved to be there. He was the third best scorer. He finished the World Championship with like 53% kills as an outside hitter.
Terrific and a great blocker. Everett and I have talked about he's an outstanding blocker on both sides, both the right and the left side, which is not necessarily easy to block in both directions. I think that's a real reason why Trentino can be so successful with that lineup, is because Lavia can block on the right so well.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
So my question though, and I mean we don't even need to talk about how good the middles are, at least not in Pedrasco. They're incredible. Can this team win a Scudetto? That's my question, because they're obviously very, very good. They came up just barely short in both Champions League and the Scudetto last year. They're good. Are they great enough to actually win one of these things?
That's a very, very good question. I think they're still not ready, but I mean, we talked earlier about the fact that some teams in SuperLega will not get relegated because there are worse teams. I think the opposite is true for Trentino. I think they won't win the Scudetto, but just because there is at least one team that is
just better than them,
significantly better than them. But if it wasn't for them, they clearly had a shot. I think they are along with Piacenza, they are their most likely candidate to finish second. I think what held them back ultimately last year was that they were kind of tired at the end of the season, despite their roster wasn't that deep, especially in the outside hitter position, because of course Kaczynski had a hell of a season, but he was still 37. So at the end of the season, he didn't have that much stamina, and the first alternative was Cavuto, which is, with all the due respect, and not exactly Leon. And I also think that against big teams, they kind of suffered with the let's call it the Lorenzetti team, with Lavia as a fake opposite, because when you face an equally powerful team on offense, you kind of want to have a real opposite on your team. But I think with the way Lavia is progressing this year, this might not be that much of an issue. So I'm very curious to see how we will fare after the incredible World Championship he had, if he can deliver the same thing on the right side as well. And as you said, I'm very, very, very thrilled about Gabriele Laurenzano. I mean, this guy is 19.
He's awesome. Crazy good defender. One of the best natural defenders I've ever seen.
Maiden season in SuperLega, he was, I don't know if he was actually the best libero or the second best libero for passing efficiency. I mean, and you're not even 20. So yeah, it was a great signing for Trento, and I'm sure it will keep this level up.
Yeah, Trentino's a fascinating team. I mean, so innovative with the style last year, but how far can it take them now with a mostly the same look, and now everyone's got another year of experience playing against it. I think that's another factor as well.
Yeah, now that I think about it, one final thing. I think one of the potential pitfalls for Trento is that with respect to the other contenders, they don't seem to have that much depth. I mean, except for Kaczynski, of course. I mean, if Lavia gets injured, Nelly is supposed to start.
That's the last thing anybody needs is giving Gabriele Nelly meaningful playing time. I mean, they have Vote to Hear as like a young Belgian kid back up middle. He was okay. Yeah, he's okay. But I agree with you. We kind of saw it late last year. I know in Champions League, Lavia got hurt, and they had to bring in Panini to play true opposite, and he looked invisible like we kind of expected. And so that is a good point. Late in the season, Trentino last year looked very, very tired. I think Everett and I talked about it at the time. That could be a problem for them again.
Or maybe they can use Kaczynski as a fake opposite. He played like that in Verona 2 years ago. So
I remember that.
That could be an option.
They've got some options.
Yeah. Also, they already have 4 Italians, so that they could actually bring him for Lavia, and they wouldn't have to make other moves.
Yeah, having that Italian libero is crucially helpful for their foreigner situation this year. So, Tommy, speaking of teams with options,
yeah,
we got to talk about Perugia. We have got to talk about Perugia. What an absolutely ridiculous lineup this team has put together.
Yep.
Absolutely insane. Now, this is a year after going 22-2 in the regular season, finishing in first place by a mile, but still failing to win a major tournament. All they won last year was the Coppa Italia. They lost in that great semifinal series in Champions League to Trentino, and they lost in the final to Lube Civitanova kind of out of nowhere. Now, I know Wilfredo Leon was injured. He ended up having knee surgery. They go out and get Kamil Semeniuk. They go out and get Flavio as a significant upgrade in the second middle position. They get Sebastian Solé to ditch the Argentinian national team and count as an Italian. And then out of nowhere, the Italian government, not like the Italian Volleyball Federation, the Italian government comes out of the clouds and out of nowhere bestows Italian citizenship upon Kamil Rykliski out of nowhere.
Yeah, but that's a very controversial topic. Just one thing, I think
it is.
He will still count as a foreigner for this season.
Oh, will he?
I think so.
Okay. Not that it'll matter for Perugia because Solé counts as Italian now, so they still have 3. But that was so strange.
Last time I checked, it was still listed as Luxembourgese, so it will count as a foreigner at least for this season.
Okay.
And that was a really, really controversial move because the official reason is that we'll give him Italian citizenship for the service he made to our country. And my question is, which one? There are foreign players that have been in SuperLega longer than him, that have won far more than him. That
Matej Kaziski, for example, of all guys to give Italian citizenship to because of great achievements in sport, why wouldn't you give it to him? He won 3 Champions Leagues for Trentino.
Yeah, or even Rafael, if you want.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a ton of. I mean, even Gapetta. I mean, I think he should be able to qualify for Italian citizenship. And Rykliski is not even been around for that long. I mean, I think it's his 4th SuperLega.
I think it's his 4th season. Yeah, Ravenna, Lube, Perugia, now Perugia again.
Yeah, right? So it's hard not to think that let's say that Perugia didn't spend the money just on the roster. Let's leave it that way. I mean, because it's very strange.
It's hard. It's hard not to draw that conclusion. It's hard.
Yeah. Also, some things in the volleyball movement in Italy are a bit shady, and of course, one could argue not only volleyball movement, but there've been some shady things in the past. And the rules change midway through the seasons. And I mean, this shouldn't surprise you at the end of the day. But yeah, it's very suspicious.
Tommy, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If you put out, if you made a 13th SuperLega team out of the 7 Perugia bench players, how high in the SuperLega would they finish? Because I think that honestly, their bench alone has a chance to make the playoffs.
Yeah,
That's how
playoffs for sure. Playoffs for sure.
Crazy. So listen to their bench. Ole Plotnitsky at outside. We talked about him throughout the World Championship. This man absolutely deserves to be starting somewhere. He's going to come off the bench for Perugia. I can't believe that. Their other outside hitter is Julio Cardenas, this young Cuban prospect. You have Jesus Herrera, the lefty from Cuba who played opposite. You have Gregor Ropret of Slovenia as the backup setter. You have Stefano Mengozzi and Roberto Russo as your backup middles, both of whom are excellent. And then you have Alessandro Piccinelli as your backup libero. That starting 7 could easily make the playoffs in the SuperLega. And that's Perugia's bench.
I mean,
it's crazy.
Let's not forget, Herrera was, if I remember correctly, the best scorer at the last World Championship. So not exactly a pushover. Russo took over for
Galassi in the World Championship final.
Yeah, Piccinelli was supposed to be Balazzo's backup, but they ultimately went with Scanferla, so he's not pushover Putu neither. And Mengozzi is not maybe a top tier middle, but he is not.
He had a good year last year.
Yeah,
very good year last year for Perugia.
Starting Mengozzi is not a shame in SuperLega. He's a good blocker. He has a pretty tricky float serve. I mean, yeah, I see them like reaching 6th to 7th place if one of the other teams tank or have some kind of couple of injuries.
That's the bench. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
that's the
So
bench.
we've got to talk about the starters though, because obviously last year was a disappointment for them because they have the highest budget in the league. Like you said, they extended Wilfredo Leon. He had his surgery. He should be healthy now in theory. I guess there were some questions about Matt Anderson's play, but then you go out and get Kamil Semeniuk, who's unbelievable. You have Simone Gianelli setting because the year before you could blame Dragan Travica for Perugia's failures. You can't do that anymore. You bring in Flavio, so you have a great second middle blocker. What's Perugia's excuse this year if they don't win everything they participate in?
Being Perugia, probably. Meaning that they have, since Mr. Sirci, who is the owner and the chairman, started splashing some serious cash on the team, I think we can all agree that they underperformed. They had one blessed season in 2017, 2018, when they won the Italian treble. And they did it with Bernardi on the bench. Let's not forget about that.
That's a real achievement right there.
Yeah, but that was, I think, Zaitsev's best season in the Italian league by far, because he sacrificed himself a lot as an outside hitter.
Yeah, I play on the left side. Right.
Yeah, he left a lot of the offensive load to Russell, who played out of his mind in that year. So really sacrificed himself a lot. And Colacci had one of the best seasons of his career. Everything went well for Perugia that year. But since then, they always had some kind of issue somewhere along the line. The first year they had Leon and Atanasievich choking in the final because they were tired and possibly even injured. Then they had Atanasievich starting to fight with Heinen. And
they ended up with Thijs ter Horst at opposite and Travica setting. That team was awful.
Yeah. And last year, probably they had the injured Leon, who probably carried down the team because Anderson was starting to pant as well. I mean, the guy is 36, 35 as well. And Rikrichki had a pretty good season, but he's still not that opposite that makes you win a Scudetto final.
I think that's exactly the point. He's a good opposite. He's a good role-playing opposite, but he's not that opposite that's going to make you win a Scudetto final. And that's what they needed Leon to be, but he was clearly not 100% last year.
Yeah, but as you said, this year they are absolute behemoth. I mean, they have the best player in the world in Wilfredo Leon, the World Championship MVP in Simone Gianelli, the Champions League MVP in Kamil Semeniuk. I mean, they really have to put quite an effort not to win everything this year.
That's it. And they have a new coach, and this is important to bring up because Andrea Anastasi is back coaching in Italy again. He's coaching Perugia. This has been an absolute revolving door of coaches. Perugia choosing to sack Nikola Grbic because they didn't want him to go coach the Polish national team. That's at least what I heard.
Yeah. More. I mean, I think the last three coaches, if you don't count Anastasi, of course, have all been sacked because at the end of the day they didn't get along with Mr. Sirci, the owner and chairman, which on one side is the main benefactor of Perugia because he really spends a lot of money on the team, and not only on the team. And I'm not talking about I'm not talking about the Ricicli this time. And there's a bit of a fan controversy that maybe one day we'll talk about. But yeah, I mean, Bernardi had some fights with Sirci even when they reached the Champions League final against Zenit Kazan, and they had a live TV fight back then. And then the next year he got fired because of how he handled the team. Then Heinen got fired because how he handled the whole Atanasievich thing. And then Grbic got fired because he refused to sorry for the repetition, the Polish job. So let's see if he can fire Anastasi as well. That may be the only pitfall Perugia can go through this season. Sirci meddling too much as he often does with the team, with the coach, and bringing some controversy, some bad mood inside the team, but it's still a pretty long shot. I mean, they could easily win even if everyone hated each other.
There's a comment in the chat. With this roster, Rob could be the coach and they'd still win. Absolutely. I actually would like to formally volunteer. I would like to volunteer myself to be the head coach of this Perugia team because
given what happened in the last season, be ready.
I'm willing to get fired if we fail to win, but it would be crazy if this Perugia team doesn't win. It'd be absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, we will see. Tommy, is Circi the Jerry Jones of Italian volleyball? Jerry Jones, like the owner, general manager of the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know if you know enough about that reference, but they're exactly the same to me. Meddling in the team's affairs too much.
I'm not particularly familiar with Jerry Jones. I know on the basketball side that Mark Cuban is a pretty voiceful owner, that he likes to meddle in and stuff. And yeah, Circi is something like that. But I have to say Perugia is some kind of a tradition in that sense, because their soccer team, like 20 years ago, they had a similar kind, less rich, of course. It was called Mr. Gaucci. And he had the habit of firing coaches, like he changed his underwear, and he made some controversial calls. And yeah, maybe it's the year of Perugia that drives you kind of mad. But yeah, I'm not very familiar with Jerry Jones, but you got the type.
Yeah, it would be. I think you said it. It would be crazy. It would be more unlikely for them to find a way not to win everything they participated in this year. All right. So speaking of teams that actually do win things, last but not least, we got to talk about the reigning champions. Lube Civitanova came kind of out of nowhere last year and persevered through a lot, and Osmani Wantarena's season-long injury and just a lot of uncertainty, and Ivan Zaitsev getting older and all sorts of stuff last year, and they still won the Scudetto anyway. And the thing was that we kind of saw this coming, but this offseason they made a ton of moves and now look like a completely different team. No more Osmani Wantarena for the first time in forever. No more Robert Landy Simone. No more Lucarelli. Even Jiri Kovar, for what it's worth, is no longer with Lube.
The 420 master.
The 420 legend himself, who we love to make fun of in the Discord. But Lube goes out and they make some interesting moves. So their Italians are Fabio Balasso. That is an excellent anchor. Probably, clearly the best libero at the World Championship, the best Italian libero in the league. Terrific. You're never going to have any problems with him.
Yeah.
They go out and get Mattia Bottolo from Padova, bring him over to Lube, which is a move I was interested in, and he's going to have to play a lot because he's Italian. Then you have a very interesting problem at opposite, because you have Ivan Zaitsev, who's Italian, who's a legend. He's not getting any younger. We didn't see him have the greatest season last year, even though he was coming off of injury. So then you have Gabby Garcia to back him up, but he's a foreigner. He was Puerto Rican, now he's American. Then another really weird thing that I'm surprised they did is went out and got 2 foreign middles. They went out and got Bartolomé Chinese from Milano, and they went out and got Isaac Santos from Brazil and Sada Cruzeiro. And that, we think that will put Simone Anzani on the bench. I know he's probably going to play a lot this year because he's Italian. And of course, Luciano Di Cecco setting, and Marlon Yant is one of the outside hitters. They also went out and got Alex Nikolov, the Bulgarian prospect. This is one of the most fascinating roster management problems in recent SuperLega memory for me. How do you see this going, Tommy, with the different moving parts that Lube has as options and having to comply with the Italian limit all the time?
I honestly don't think the Italian quota will be an issue, because, as you said, even if it's not the intended starter, maybe Simone Anzani is still a world championship starter. He did really good last year. He was a great blocker, and he had this kind of a hybrid serve that he didn't really use at the World Championship, but he has this hybrid.
It's nasty.
Floater spin serve that is really, really, really nasty. It kind of reminds me of the one that Kojamernik had a couple years ago, but with a bit more spin. And so I think that with a little bit of dominoing, let's say, they will always find a way to comply with the Italians rule. I mean, we talked about money a lot in this episode, but money is an issue in Superlega, and Lube has been, along with Perugia, by far the biggest spender in the last 5-6 seasons, and naturally they were the biggest contenders along with Perugia in the last season. Let's not forget they won the last 3 Scudettos. They won the 6 Scudettos in the last 10 season, not of course counting the shortened COVID season.
That's crazy amount of success. Crazy to win 6 out of 10. Crazy.
Yeah, so they've been, of course, consistent. Given the Lube Kitchens is one of the is I think the second biggest kitchen factory in Italy. They have a 200 million euros revenue.
Whoa.
So they have the money, but this year they clearly said we can't afford to spend that much money on volleyball anymore. So we're gonna plan a little bit. We're gonna give more space to youngsters. We're gonna have to do some scouting, and that's where also Nikolov comes in. It's a very, very interesting prospect, but is of course. It's early for him to make a difference in Superlega, probably.
Yeah, and although he is fluent in Italian, he still counts as a foreigner. So he's he's going to be a great prospect, but I don't see him playing that much this year just because he's 18 and he doesn't help you with the Italian thing.
No, but they have Jant, who was terrific last year, despite being 21. He has a incredible athletic potential, and he still has much to learn, and he really can be the next one to Reina, not just because he's Cuban as the former Lube player. Speaking of which, the one to Reina leaving Lube was kind of controversial because he was actually supposed to play in Lube this season as well, but at last minute he went to the management and said, you know what, I'm going to China, they offered me a bunch of money, see you. And that kind of meddled with Lube's planning. But they also have a very interesting prospect in Bottolo. He had a really good season last year. He was a really good weapon from the line, but also on the offense. Maybe he's not ready to take on to be the starter of a Scudetto contender, but we'll see about that.
There's a couple that's exactly right. I think there's a lot of kind of turning points of this Lube team about what kind of season they're going to have. Bottolo is a big one. So it's time to give our obligatory shout out to the great Ronnie Cuban Spike, because we can't have a Volleyball Source episode without talking about Ronnie Cuban Spike. But he messaged me earlier today because Lube's been playing these preseason scrimmages, and they played one against Perugia where apparently they got smacked 4-0. What Ronnie told me is 2 important things. One is that Marlon Yant is hurt, and he probably won't be ready to play until about week 3 of the season. And I mean, Yant didn't even play that much of the World Championship for Cuba. He's been dealing with an injury all summer, so that's something to follow along with for sure.
Yeah.
The other thing that he told me is that Isaac Santos, the Brazilian middle that they're bringing in, who did not play the World Championship at all because of a back injury, that back injury might keep him out for a lot longer than that. I heard maybe even the whole season. There's a chance. There's a chance that from what I heard, I guess whatever Ronnie heard, that Isaac's back injury might require surgery, and that might keep him out the entire season. But as much as that sucks, they still have Anzani, and Anzani is a very, very good elite level Italian middle blocker. And again, he's Italian, so it frees up Lube to do some other things. They've also got Gabi Garcia at opposite, who played a decent amount last year and was pretty good. So a lot of options. There's no way they repeat their championship with this particular group.
Very unlikely.
Very unlikely. I think they could still finish in the top 4, though. It's going to be an interesting coaching project for Blangini.
Probably. You mentioned Gabi Garcia, so he is officially counted as a U.S. player.
Yes, he can't play for the U.S. national team until 2024, but he was in the gym. He was in the American gym all summer, so he is an American volleyball player now.
I'm asking because if you count him out, this would be the first Superlega season since forever without American players.
I was thinking about that earlier, and he's the only one. He's the only kind of American player in the entire SuperLega. It's crazy to me that for like following along with this league, there won't be any American players other than Gabby
Yeah,
this
also
entire year. No DeFalco, no Anderson, no Russell, no Jeschke, no Max
no
Holt,
Holt.
no everybody's gone. It's crazy.
And it's even crazier if you think that if you look at the women's championship, there will be like, I think if I count correctly, out of 68 foreign players, 21 will be Americans.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And that doesn't surprise me at all. And the Italian women's league last year was dominated by Americans, and it probably will be again.
Yeah, it's going to be a much more even season now that the Gon is gone. But yeah, that's for another thing.
Another show entirely. But yeah, just
Yeah.
to wrap up this Lube team,
Yeah,
somebody putting in the chat, I know why Nikolov is in Lube. I will tell you in Discord if interested. Yes, I am interested.
I see.
And you should all join the Volleyball Source Discord. The link is in the description. And so some of those spicy news bits like that one, or like Tommy was alluding to earlier, the Discord is the place to get into those. So definitely join that. Point in the chat, didn't Zaitsev play outside hitter against Perugia? He means in the scrimmages like today or yesterday. The answer is yes, because Yant's not healthy. Like Botolo was there, and Nikolov is at the U20 European Championships with Bulgaria right now. So yes, we did see Ivan on the left. I think who's their fourth outside hitter? Is it Mattia Gottardo?
Yeah, Gottardo.
I don't know who he is.
He was the backup libero last year in Padova, and he was one of the guys who came from their youth academy. I think he also played for the under 21 national team. I don't remember if he played as an outside hitter or a libero. I think as an outside hitter. But yeah, I remember that Lube's general manager made it clear that we signed Gottardo to play as an outside hitter, not as a libero.
Okay.
But yeah, he's likely a defensive specialist and not that gifted on offense. Yeah. But yeah, we mentioned Zaitsev. Zaitsev, I think, is going to be a really big question mark on Lube. First thing, because he may have played on the left on this preseason game, but remember that he left Perugia because he didn't want to play on the left anymore.
Yeah. He does not want to play on the left. That needs to be made very, very clear.
Yeah, even if he may able to lengthen his career a bit by playing left, but we don't know. I mean, it's his deal. And also, which Zaitsev are we going to see in this season? Because he basically got excluded at the last minute from the team that won the World Championship. And the George, of course, is not an idiot. So if he made that decision, there has to be some kind of reason. Some say because he was a heavy presence for Romano, having by far the most famous Italian player behind him would have put too much pressure on him. Some say that he's far from peak physical condition. Some say that he's starting to show some pretty significant signs of decline in his game. I think this will be a very interesting season for him to see if he's still pretty much the Ivan Zaitsev we all know and like, or if he's starting to go to a pretty steep downward trajectory.
Yeah, I think that's the real question for them as well. And I mean, they have Gabi Garcia to bring in if they need him, if we don't see a good Zaitsev. But then that's one more Italian that you need to replace in the starting lineup, which we can assume would be with Anzani. But then what do you do with these two middles that you paid money for if Isak is in fact healthy? So a lot of moving parts. However, they still have Luciano De Cecco, who I don't think we've talked about enough as being one of him and Simone were the reasons why Lube won last year.
Absolutely.
No question. Without question. Luciano De Cecco was so ridiculously good at the end of last club season, and the him and Simone connection. I'm upset that we won't get to watch that for another year. But De Cecco is the man, and he will get the most out of what he has with this Lube team, regardless of who's around him.
Well, maybe De Cecco will move to Piacenza next season. Who knows?
I would actually kind of take a swap with him and Blizzard. Like, see Blizzard set this Lube team with Chinese there. That would be pretty fun.
Yeah, definitely.
So We did it, Tommy. It took us 2 hours, but we did it. We previewed the entire Italian SuperLega. That was amazing. I love the amount of coverage that we did. I think everybody now knows just about everything they need to know about all the teams. Last thing I think we got to tell them is when everything starts. The matches are scheduled, and the first matches are Saturday, October 1st. So that's soon. That's like a week and a half. So a couple matches on Saturday, October 1st. The rest are Sunday, October 2nd. And everything from there, pretty much every weekend, there will be SuperLega volleyball to watch. So if you're around the world, we got the opportunity last year to watch the entire league, every match with English commentary on Volleyball World TV. That's great news. So the entire world can pay for a subscription to that and watch every SuperLega match, men's and women's. Or if you're in Italy, like Rai, whatever various TV channels you guys have.
Right.
Usually Rai or Rai 2, right?
Yeah, but if you can understand English, Rob is far better than Lucchetta and Colantoni, so listen to Rob.
Thank you. I'm honored.
The problem is, I think that if you're in Italy and you're watching the game with Volleyball World TV, you actually get the local Italian comment. You don't get the English one.
So you have to like VPN out of your own country to watch your own country's games. Wow. Well, anyway, I think that's about it. I think we did it, Tommy. Thank you so much, man, for coming on the show. I know it's like 11 p.m. in Italy right now. So thanks for your time. Thanks for your expertise in breaking all this down. Everybody join the Discord, join the Volleyball Source Discord, and chirp Tommy about about how Modena's not going to finish top 4 this year or whatever you want. We'll see you all in there, and we'll see you next time on Volleyball Source for more Women's World Championships coverage. And I think myself and our good friend Adonos are going to do something similar next week for the Polish Bundesliga. So stick around for that.
He's great. So listen to him, join the Discord, and thank you, Rob, for having me.
Thank you very much, Tommy. We'll see you next time, everyone. Thanks for watching. Join the Discord. We'll see you there.
Ciao, ciao.